The British Empire, at its height, ruled over a quarter of the world, shaping history and influencing billions of lives. But at what cost? Global expansion brought technological and economic advances, but also left a trail of exploitation and conflict. This video delves into the untold stories and sacrifices made in the name of progress. Imagine a world where the English language is spoken on every continent, where modern legal systems and infrastructure are the legacy of a bygone empire. But what few know is the price paid for these achievements. Entire populations were displaced, cultures were suppressed, and resources were exploited. How do these events affect our understanding of history and the world today? If you're passionate about history and want to understand the roots of today's global challenges, this video is for you. We will explore the economic and technological benefits that the British Empire brought, but also the human and cultural costs that are often forgotten. Prepare for a journey that challenges your perceptions and offers a new perspective on one of the most influential chapters in world history. The rise of the British Empire was not a one-off event, but the result of a series of geographic, political, and economic factors that had come together over the centuries. Britain's strategic location, surrounded by sea, provided natural protection against land invasions, allowing the country to focus on developing a powerful navy. This naval force became the backbone of the empire, ensuring control of global trade routes. The Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain in the late 18th century, further fueled imperial expansion. Technological innovations, such as the steam engine and the mechanization of textile production, increased productivity and created a demand for raw materials and overseas markets. Britain, with its dominant navy, was well-positioned to exploit these opportunities around the world. Domestic politics also played a crucial role. The relative stability of the British government and the growing influence of merchants and industrialists created an environment conducive to expansion. The British East India Company, founded in 1600, exemplifies how trade and colonization intertwined to expand the empire's reach. However, expansion was not without resistance. Conflicts with other European powers, such as France and Spain, shaped the empire's boundaries. The Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century cemented British dominance, especially after Napoleon's defeat in 1815. Britain emerged from these conflicts as the world's leading naval and economic power. At the same time, exploration and colonization brought significant challenges. Governing distant and diverse territories required complex bureaucracy and often the imposition of foreign legal and cultural systems. These actions often generated tensions and resistance among local populations, sowing the seeds of future conflicts and independence movements. The expansion of the British Empire brought with it a series of advances that shaped the modern world. Among the most significant benefits were the technological and scientific innovations that emerged during this period. The Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain, spurred the development of new technologies that transformed global production and trade. The steam engine, for example, revolutionized transportation and industry, enabling the efficient movement of goods and people. In addition, the empire facilitated the spread of the English language, which became a global lingua franca. This not only facilitated trade and diplomacy, but also promoted the exchange of ideas and knowledge between different cultures. The infrastructure developed under British rule, such as railways and ports, is still used in many former colonies, serving as the basis for contemporary economic development. The legal and administrative systems introduced by the British also left a lasting legacy. Many countries that were part of the empire adopted variations of the British legal system, which emphasized the rule of law and judicial independence. These systems helped establish a basis for democratic governance and the protection of individual rights in many regions of the world. Imperial expansion also brought significant advances in medicine and public health. The need to keep troops and administrators healthy in tropical climates led to important discoveries in the field of tropical medicine. The development of vaccines and treatments for diseases such as malaria and yellow fever saved countless lives and continues to benefit global health today. However, these benefits did not come without costs. The exploitation of natural resources and the imposition of the establishment of economic systems that favored Britain often resulted in inequality and tension. The extraction of raw materials such as tea, cotton, and minerals enriched the mother country, but often impoverished the colonies. These practices established patterns of trade and development that still influence global economies. The spread of education and academic institutions was also a significant benefit. Universities and schools established during the colonial period promoted literacy and the advancement of knowledge. However, these educational systems often reflected British values and worldviews, suppressing local cultures and traditions. The expansion of the British Empire also facilitated cultural exchange, resulting in a rich diversity of artistic, culinary, and architectural influences. However, this exchange was not always equitable, and many local cultures were marginalized or suppressed in the process. Understanding these dynamics is crucial to a balanced assessment of the imperial legacy. The expansion of the British Empire brought significant advances, but also imposed substantial human and cultural costs. The exploitation of natural resources and the imposition of economic systems that favored Britain often resulted in inequality and tension. Local populations faced displacement, exploitation, and cultural suppression, leaving lasting scars on societies around the world. The extraction of raw materials such as tea, cotton, and minerals enriched the metropole, but often impoverished the colonies. Intensive agricultural practices and the exploitation of local labor led to resource depletion and environmental degradation. These actions established patterns of trade and development that still influence global economies, perpetuating economic inequalities. The imposition of British legal and administrative systems often suppressed local traditions and practices. The replacement of traditional legal systems with British laws often ignored the cultural and social nuances of colonized communities. This resulted in conflict and resistance, as local populations fought to preserve their identities and ways of life. The spread of education and academic institutions promoted literacy, but often reflected British values and worldviews. Curricula that emphasized British history and culture often marginalized or ignored local narratives. This led to a loss of traditional knowledge and the erosion of cultural identities. The cultural exchange facilitated by empire resulted in a rich diversity of artistic, culinary, and architectural influences. However, this exchange was not always equitable. Many local cultures were marginalized or suppressed in the process of forced assimilation. The imposition of British cultural norms often resulted in the loss of indigenous practices and traditions, leaving a legacy of cultural disconnection. The conflicts and resistance that arose in response to colonization shaped struggles for independence in many former colonies. Anti-colonial movements gained momentum as local populations sought self-determination and the restoration of their cultural identities. These struggles often resulted in violence and instability, leaving lasting scars on post-colonial societies. Economic exploitation and resource extraction also had significant environmental impacts. Intensive agriculture and mining have led to land degradation and biodiversity loss. These environmental impacts continue to affect local communities, limiting their ability to sustain themselves and develop sustainably. The suppression of local languages and cultural practices has also had profound effects. The imposition of English as an official language in many colonies often led to the marginalization of indigenous languages. This has resulted in a loss of linguistic and cultural diversity, affecting the transmission of traditional knowledge and social cohesion. The legacy of these colonial practices is still felt today. Many former colonies struggle with issues of identity, economic inequality, and political instability. Understanding these human and cultural costs is crucial to a balanced assessment of the imperial legacy and to addressing contemporary challenges in an informed and sensitive manner. The legacy of the British Empire remains visible in many aspects of the contemporary world. Legal systems, infrastructures, and cultural practices introduced during the colonial period continue to influence modern societies. Understanding this legacy is essential to understanding current global dynamics and the challenges faced by many former colonies. Legal systems based on the British model are widely used in former colonies. Principles such as the rule of law and judicial independence are cornerstones of many modern democracies. These systems helped establish a foundation for governance and the protection of individual rights, although implementation and effectiveness vary widely between countries. The infrastructure developed under British rule, such as railways, ports, and communications networks, is still central to trade and economic development in many regions. These infrastructures facilitated the integration of former colonies into the global economy, but they also reflect historical inequalities in access to resources and opportunities. The spread of the English language is one of the most enduring legacies of the empire. As a global lingua franca, English facilitates trade, diplomacy, and the exchange of knowledge. However, the dominance of English also raises questions about the preservation of local languages and cultures, which were often marginalized during the colonial period. Modern relations between the UK and its former colonies are complex and multifaceted. Organizations such as the Commonwealth promote economic and cultural cooperation between members, but they also reflect historical tensions and inequalities. Migration between the UK and former colonies is an example of these complex relationships, with significant flows of people seeking economic and educational opportunities. The cultural legacy of empire is evident in the architecture, cuisine, and social practices of many former colonies. Colonial buildings and monuments serve as visible reminders of the imperial past, while culinary practices and festivities reflect the fusion of cultural influences. However, these cultural elements also bear the marks of colonial hierarchies and inequalities. Education and academic systems established during the colonial period continue to influence contemporary educational practices. Universities and schools in former colonies often follow British models, promoting literacy and the advancement of knowledge. However, these systems also face challenges in adapting to local needs and contexts, reflecting the tensions between colonial legacies and national aspirations. The economic legacy of empire is evident in the structures of trade and patterns of development that persist to this day. Many former colonies continue to rely on commodities and markets established during the colonial period, which can limit their ability to diversify economically and develop sustainably. Understanding the contemporary legacy of the British Empire is crucial to addressing today's global challenges. Issues of economic inequality, political conflicts, and cultural tensions often have roots in colonial practices and structures. Recognizing and addressing these issues is essential to promoting equitable and sustainable development around the world. Reflecting on the legacy of the British Empire provides an opportunity to understand the complexities of history and its lasting impacts. Imperial expansion brought significant advances in technology, economics, and infrastructure, but it also imposed substantial human and cultural costs. Assessing this legacy in a balanced way is essential to addressing today's global challenges and promoting a more just and sustainable future. One of the key lessons we can learn is the importance of recognizing and addressing historical inequalities. Colonial practices often perpetuated economic and social inequalities that persist to this day. Recognizing these inequalities is the first step to developing policies and initiatives that promote equity and inclusion. Another crucial lesson is the need to preserve and value cultural diversity. The imposition of cultural systems and values during the colonial period often led to the marginalization of local languages and traditions. Promoting cultural and linguistic diversity is essential to maintaining the richness of human heritage and fostering inclusive societies. Understanding the dynamics of power and exploitation is crucial to avoiding repeating the mistakes of the past. The history of the British Empire highlights how the pursuit of resources and power can lead to exploitation and conflict. Addressing these issues ethically and responsibly is crucial to promoting sustainable development and global peace. Furthermore, The legacy of empire teaches us about the resilience and adaptability of human societies. Despite the challenges and hardships imposed by colonization, many communities found ways to preserve their identities and cultures. These stories of resilience offer valuable lessons about the importance of self-determination and peaceful resistance. Reflection on the imperial legacy also encourages us to consider the importance of international cooperation and intercultural dialogue. Contemporary relations between the United Kingdom and its former colonies are much more, led by a shared history of cultural interactions and exchanges. Fostering dialogue and cooperation can help overcome historical tensions and build a future based on mutual respect and collaboration. Applying these lessons to today's global challenges requires a critical and informed approach. Issues such as economic inequality, political conflicts, and cultural tensions have historical roots that must be acknowledged and addressed. In doing so, we can work toward a more equitable and sustainable future, where lessons from the past inform our present and future actions. The journey through the legacy of the British Empire reveals a story of advances and costs, of achievements and sacrifices. Imperial expansion shaped the world in profound and lasting ways, influencing global legal systems, infrastructures, and cultures. Yet these benefits came at a significant price, affecting populations and ecosystems around the world. Recognizing these complexities is the first step toward a more complete and balanced understanding of history. By reflecting on the past, we can learn valuable lessons about justice, inclusion, and sustainability that are essential to addressing today's global challenges. The call to action is clear. Continue to explore, question, and learn from history. Share your reflections and insights. Engage in constructive discussions, and consider how these lessons can be applied in your communities and the world. Together, we can work toward a more just and equitable future, where knowledge from the past informs our present and future actions.